I'll cut this all off. Okay. All right. So I'll start it off. All right. Hello. Our project is Late Byzantium to the 1453 fall to the Turks. Our group members are Evan Graves, myself, Julia, Daniel, and Keanu. First, we have Evan with social.
For social, I chose the theme system, papacy, and Saint Scholastica. I want to focus on Saint Scholastica. She was born in 1482 and lived till 543. She was a nun, Saint Benedict's sister, and influenced adoption of the Benedict rule, providing guidance for religious life of women. She supported gender roles in society, which shows why she belongs in social, and she had an adoption of the rule that provided guidance in religious life of women living in the converts. And I got my source from the AP World textbook, chapter 3, and the end matter. Next, we have Daniel.
I did political, and my three terms were Caesaropapism, Constantine, and Justinian. Caesaropapism was a policy created by Constantine that granted the emperor political and religious power. So after this policy was implemented, the gap between any other official and the emperor grew much wider. And in addition, some have said that Constantine oversaw external church problems instead of spiritual ones, so there was still power to religious people. My next term is Constantine. He was the creator of Constantinople and Caesaropapism. His greatest achievement was making Constantinople culturally diverse. In addition, Constantine established Christianity as the official religion of the empire. My final term is Justinian. Justinian created Justinian's Code, the universal law in Byzantium. Its creation was based and depended on many, many years of Roman law. In addition, Justinian created the Hagia Sophia. It was an iconic symbol of the Byzantine Empire in political, religious, and social standpoints. Now on to Keanu with interactions with the environment.
For interactions with the environment, I chose Marco Polo, horses, and European cultivators. Marco Polo traveled to China at a young age of 17, and the route that he took built new connections between India, China, and Europe. These trade routes were used a lot after his death. I also talked about horses and the advancements the Europeans made, and European cultivators and the advancements they made on agriculture. Next is Jaden with culture.
So my turns are the big religions, so Greek, Christianity, and Islam, and then the Hagia Sophia, and Saint Benedict and Saint Basil. So the Byzantine Empire succeeded the Roman Empire, so therefore the Greek culture was an influence in the Byzantine Empire at the start. Christianity spread from the Middle East to Byzantine and took a strong hold. The papacy also existed in two places, the Western Christian Church based at Rome and the Eastern Christian Church based in Constantinople. These churches existed until, these churches existed, and then the schism happened in 1053, where they were officially renamed as the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church. So for Islam, since Islam was founded in the 7th century CE, it did not play a role in the Byzantine Empire until late in its lifetime. In fact, the Ottoman Empire was Islamic and caused the end of the Byzantine Empire in 1453 CE. The Hagia Sophia was a great work of Christian architecture created in 537 CE. Hagia Sophia means holy wisdom in Turkish. The magnificent building remains intact to this day, although it was a mosque, as Ottoman conquerors converted the Christian piece of architecture to an Islamic mosque. Finally, Saint Benedict of Nursia and Saint Basil of Caesarea influenced how Byzantine Christians should behave. They created regulations for monasteries, which were buildings for monks, which included asceticism and meditation, and work on behalf of the church. Asceticism means severe self-discipline and avoidance of all forms of indulgence, typically for religious reasons. The Christian monks who followed these men gave up their personal possessions, lived communal lives, and followed the virtues of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Saint Benedict's sister, Saint Scholastica, also adapted the lifestyle for women to follow as well. Their influence continued to this day. Next, we have Julia with the economic.
Constantinople was the center of European trade. Roads previously established by the Romans became the common way for traders to travel the lands, and the empire's convenient placement allowed for water routes to be used to expand trading to across the Mediterranean Sea. All three of these contributed to commercial trading. Trading routes, including the Roman roads and water routes through the Mediterranean, allowed for the trade from territories between West Europe to South and Southeast Asia. Items commonly traded to and from Constantinople included wine, silk, timber, salt, and spices. And then to my next theme, technology. Greek fire. It was a chemical compound compacted into weapon form and used to set enemy ships on fire. The flame was also water resistant. So Greek fire was first used on Arabs attacking Constantinople around 673 CE. It was used a few times after, but ultimately put out of use until the 10th century against invading Russians. The exact chemical composition was kept a secret, so Greek fire's formula is still unknown to this day. Table fork. An implement with two or more prongs used for lifting food to the mouth or holding it when cutting. The modern table fork was invented around the 4th century in the Byzantine Empire. Before its invention, many would eat with their hands or sometimes even a communal spoon, as crude forks had not yet reached the general media. Churches did not like the fork as they saw it as an item of vanity, slowing the fork spread across all of Europe until around the 18th century. The pendentive dome. A pendentive dome was used for the reconstruction of the Hagia Sophia. Previous Roman domes were placed on top of circular structures, which were then on top of the regular rectangular-shaped buildings. The pendentive dome was invented in the 6th century by the Byzantines with their knowledge of physics. The pendentive dome itself is a dome placed directly on top of the rectangular-shaped building. And now on to Jaden.
So for this map, this shows the reign of the Byzantine Empire from 527 to 1360 CE. As you can see, the Byzantine Empire was largest under the rule of Justinian I. Although, due to the spread of Islam, the empire quickly shortened its hold to only the northeastern Mediterranean Sea. This was due to Islamic expansion and a struggle to remain in control in faraway lands. Thus, the empire consolidated and continued to grow smaller until its collapse in 1463. Just to show a visual of the previous empire and the empire which succeeded the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire was large in size, but a few things to note is how the Roman Empire had a further reach in Western Europe, and the Ottoman Empire had a further reach in the Middle East than the Byzantine Empire. Now off to Daniel with our document.
For the document, I decided to highlight a section of Justinian's Code. For the historical context, Justinian's Code took place from 529 to 534 CE. Roman law was considered while the code was being written, and the section of the document I chose shows emphasis on Jews in the Byzantine Empire. For the intended audience, the document was addressed towards a large group of people, in particular Jews. This was official law, so it was written by Orthodox people. For the purpose, the source was produced with the goal of making order and consistency throughout Byzantium in terms of law. And finally, for the point of view, the source was produced with the goal of making order and it established Christianity as the superior religion and limits Jews' authority. Since it was written by Orthodox Christians, it is predictable that Byzantium would be Christian-centric. Now on to Keanu with the leader/figure.
Leader in the late Byzantium. I chose to talk about Constantine. His father was the emperor of the Western Roman Empire before Constantine got to power after his death. Constantine ruled the Western Roman Empire in 312 and became the emperor of the whole Roman Empire in 324. The biggest impact that he had was how he was the first Christian emperor and ultimately helped the spread of Christianity in the Byzantine Empire. His son took over after Constantine died, after Constantine's son defeated his brothers to rule the empire. And lastly, our last slide has the sources we used throughout this presentation. Thank you for watching.